This podcast is brought to you by Iron Temper Supplies. They're the group behind the first ever Iron Gate International Tattoo Convention going down in November in Sydney at the Hordern Pavilion, November 3rd, 4th and 5th. There's over 300 tattooers. It's invite only, so they've gone for quality and quantity, which is pretty rare. Most conventions, you apply, you pay the money, you tattoo there. And sometimes it leaves a lot to be desired, but not this one. Iron Gate is the new frontier on Australian conventions, and I can't be more excited to be working with them on this podcast. With all that being said, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the True Love Tattoo Podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of my dearest old friends from 383 on the Gold Coast. It's Louis Stephenson. Louis,
Mate.
Thanks for coming down.
Cheers, mate. Yeah.
We've been starting every episode basically with how people got into tattooing, sort of like how it all started for them, and then just going through to today, essentially. So how'd you get you started in tattooing?
Well, I guess I always liked drawing and painting and stuff at home. But was a bit aimless for quite some time, especially in my 20s. There was a lot of partying and a lot of things that didn't really sort of facilitate a stable plan.
Right.
Doing lots of different jobs and bouncing around, doing lots of different things. But that was always constant, like in sort of art and design and things like that. And then I moved to Australia when I was 30.
Right.
Because I'd been travelling over here previously and met my partner Sophie. We're still together now. It's like 13 years later. And when I came over here, I was like, right, I'd always loved tattooing.
Yeah.
I'd always loved sort of like being in tattoo shops and getting tattooed. And I was like, I think this is something I would really love to do. And I was like, well, at 30, I was like, well, this is probably my last roll of the dice if I'm going to do that. It's not, but yeah, I thought that at the time.
Yeah, okay.
And I started getting tattooed at Man's Ruin, which you know down in St Kilda, because I was living around the corner and met Pete, Pav and Mikey and everyone there, Lydia. And yeah, I was just getting tattooed there and chatting shit with the guys, and then they became mates and we were talking about music and stuff, and then an opportunity came up where the girl who was doing the desk at the time, she left to go and do farm work or something, and I had just got Sophie knocked up. So, I kind of thought, oh no, I've blown it. Like, I'm not going to be able to go and be an apprentice tattooer with a baby on the way.
Yeah. It's sort of you hear all the stories of like an apprentice, you're working for free and all that sort of stuff, but then you're working for free and you're expected to be there all the time, and it's like, well, you have a family to support at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I relayed the story to Pete while I was getting tattooed that I just got my missus knocked up and I think it's all over now. He's like, no, mate, that kind of happened to me. That's how I got into tattooing. And we were both around the same. I think I was like 32 or 33 at the time. And
Yeah.
Pete was like, no, that was how old I was when I got into tattooing. And for the same reason, like he got his partner at the time pregnant and they were going to have a kid and he thought the same thing. It was
But people might remember episode 2 of season 1, Pete Pav was the guest, and his story is almost word for word. You know, in his 30s, just got his partner at the time pregnant, and decided to just throw himself into it.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. And he said, well, the timing's perfect because the shop girls left and you can come in and help us out with, setting up, breaking down, keeping the place clean, booking people in, all that background stuff, behind the scenes that you don't often, you don't get to see when you're actually, getting tattooed in the shop.
Yeah. Was it a tough sell to pitch it to Sophie? It's like, hey, I know we're about to have a baby, but I want to do this at the same time. Or was she just behind it all the way?
Nah, she's chill, man. Like she's just behind everything that I
Yeah.
do, which is, I mean, kind of reckless sometimes, I guess. But yeah, no, she was real supportive. I wouldn't have been able to do it without her because,
Yeah.
yeah, she's just kind of was like, no, go for it. You'll be fine. We'll be fine. Like,
Yeah. And at the time you were managing a seafood restaurant as well, like
Yeah.
at night. So like you were apprenticing during the day and moonlighting as a bar and restaurant manager at night.
yeah, firing people and hiring people and throwing drunks out and all of that sort of stuff as well. So, yeah, I'd go.
What's that like being sort of like in that managerial position where you're sort of top of the food chain in a restaurant, and then at your other job you're essentially bottom of the food chain?
Well, yeah,
Like-
that's what I was about to say. I'd go in an average day. I'd go from being like a dad, an apprentice, a dad, and then a manager, and then doing that every day was like, yeah, you had to remind yourself where you were. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an apprenticeship at first. It was kind of like Pete was like, oh, I'll show you how it all works, how the industry works, and we'll give you all the tools that you need to go and get an apprenticeship somewhere else.
Right.
This is not an apprenticeship. And
Right.
he made that very clear from the start. But I think that's a story as old as time, isn't it? That one, like, this is
Yeah.
not an apprenticeship. It's just more of a test, and you keep going back and make yourself kind of like,
Valuable.
yeah, valuable. Yeah, like I think they said we didn't want you to go somewhere else because we liked having you around and what you were doing was, the right thing. So we decided to apprentice you here,
Yeah.
which was real great for me because I only live around the corner.
Yeah. Man's Ruin's since moved locations, but how would you describe the original sort of Man's Ruin, like when you started working there?
It was like a glass box on an island surrounded by zombie hordes in the apocalypse. Yeah, it's like in the roughest corner of the roughest street of St Kilda, basically.
Yeah.
And just constantly getting harassed by people with, I guess, drug problems and
Yeah. Varying degrees of sobriety.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Varying degrees of violence as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a little island in that sense, but we kind of powered up with a lot of the shops around us, and there was like a nice little community vibe around there. And I think when you were working there, we had Catherine over the road there serving us coffee. She basically gave me free coffee and food for my entire apprenticeship because she felt sorry for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there was the Irish pub, and we were all mates with those guys, and yeah.
Yeah, but when I think I started at Man's Ruin beginning of 2019, and you were already there at that point, and I think you were already apprenticing at that point.
Yeah, possibly. I think I did about 18 months as like the shop guy, and then I think I just started the apprenticeship in the January. So yeah, it's probably about exactly the same time.
Yeah. So like, walk us through kind of like what an apprenticeship was like in a busy St Kilda street shop.
Right. Yeah, it's like finding time to draw was hard, but I did it. But then also you're expected to come in, open the shop, keep it clean, get rid of the rubbish, move the less desirable members of, of the community along. You'd have people on the doorstep when you come in using various substances and just passed out on the step there. You'd have people in the bin room getting up to all sorts of things. I think one time I found a couple actually rooting in the bin room, which was which was interesting. And then the guy tried to tell me that I was trying to sell him drugs when the body corp guy came in and tried to move him along. He was like, "This guy's trying to sell me drugs." I'm like, "I'm trying to put the bins out, man." What's going on here?
Yeah, I felt like there were so many like identifiable characters where we just gave them names because we didn't know what their names were. And it's like, oh, I saw such and such this morning. Yeah. And then it would just be the craziest, like before you even started work each day, you would have like 3 stories of like, I can't wait to go home and tell like such and such what happened today.
Yeah, like that one in particular, like where I went down into the bin store. That was like a local character who was a bit eccentric, and when I went in there, I opened the door and found the guys behind one of the tall bins just sort of going at it. And I was like, sorry, like, because what do you do when you find people doing
You
that?
feel like you're intruding on them, but they're in your bin room.
But I sort of like crept around to put the bin bag in the actual bin, and he was like, don't worry, I'm a doctor. And in my head, I'm like, you're clearly not.
This is a medical exam he's conducting.
Yeah, this is an odd medical exam. And then the body corporate guy came in, one of the Sri Lankan guys who we were mates with,
Yeah.
came along and got quite angry with the dude because I think he'd moved him on a few times already.
Yeah.
And then that's when he tried to implicate me in the drug deal that never happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was one of the local ones, so we saw him quite a lot.
Yeah. There was just always, it was like the shop was on a busy tram stop. There was always people there, and they just, all the sort of vagrants would just like congregate in that area. And whenever like things would happen and you'd call the police station was so far away. And by the time that they would eventually end up, it's all done and dusted and stuff. So it was like half the time the police wouldn't come. And it was just like one of those areas where it's like, where is it? Oh, no, fuck that. I'm not going there.
Don't bother with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Or they would, and they just pick him up and move him on.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to traverse that whilst you're an apprentice is interesting.
Yeah.
All of that sort of stuff, because there's a lot of pressure, as you know, there's a lot of pressure as an apprentice. So
Definitely.
yeah,
And especially being a street shop, it's sort of like a lot of those things that are coming in the door, sort of if it's something that they think the apprentice is capable of, they get handballed to the apprentice as well. So it's like you're getting all the little sort of like Pinteresty things, which are in most cases the most difficult things to do as well.
absolutely.
And just having to, all right, in at the deep end, figure it out.
Yeah.
I remember like when you were apprenticing, there was like this common theme happening. It was like you were taking like a long time to do tattoos.
Yeah, yeah.
And Pete was like, okay, how do I speed him up? I know he can do it faster. Like, what was Pete's method for speeding you up?
Getting me to tattoo a homeless person. That one time, I think that came. That one helped because. I mean, she was stoked with it. Yeah. She loved that tattoo.
Free tat. She
Exactly.
had a shopping trolley of things, and she's like, "Can I bring my trolley in?"
Yeah, I had to decline because there wasn't much room in the old shop. But,
Yeah.
it was safe enough outside. But yeah, she made things a bit difficult. Yeah, she wasn't very clean, and
Wasn't very clean. Wasn't very quiet.
I made a lot of odd noises when I was tattooing her. You know, it is a painful experience, I guess, getting tattooed. But most people hold that inside, and she didn't. She wanted to share it. That was the quickest tat I think I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Pete was onto something.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you can do it.
But I mean, like the main thing he instilled in me, in all seriousness, was, this was going to be a trade for you. So, like, there are times when you need to pick your way through a tattoo and do it carefully. And I mean, you always do them carefully, but there is a time when you need to take a lot more time.
Yeah.
Generally, you should be trying to just have one method that gets them in and gets them out, because it's a painful experience for the person. So
Yeah.
it's not really fair to make them indulge your sort of whims with time. They want to get in and out as soon as possible, really, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that shop, it was also like, I learned so much there in terms of like customer interaction and customer experience and stuff like that. And, Mikey Sharks and Pete Pav were just wizards at it in terms of like, if someone comes in, they're not leaving without a tattoo, and not in a like, we're going to pin them down and fucking make them have it.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, they've obviously walked in here because they want something, and it's like, let's give them what they want, and just seeing how they do that and like convince the customer, not even convince, but like encourage the customer. It's like, that's a great idea. let's do it. Someone here can handle it right now for you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I've carried that on through my career, and it's given me it's given me a lot more sort of confidence, I guess, to approach the person who's come into the shop and kind of just make it easy for them. I think that's the important thing, because it is daunting. You know, we spend all our time in tattoo shops, but if you don't and you walk into a tattoo shop, it can be kind of a daunting experience. Kind of, you feel a bit intimidated, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's up to us to just like go, no, it's fine. This is how it's going to work out, and I can do this for you, and you know, we'll get you in and out, and hopefully by the end of it you'll be happy, and you'll have what you want when you come in. But yeah, it's very much, if someone walks into the tattoo shop, then they should really be leaving with a tattoo.
Yeah. So it's you're starting to tattoo, you're building confidence, you're doing loads of walk-ins, but you're still working nights.
Yeah.
So at what point do you sort of like take the plunge, go all in on tattooing, and sort of remove the security and the safety net of your night job?
Well, yeah, it was. That was a stressful time for sure. Like having at the time, you know, it was Fox. I think my son Fox was probably maybe 2, and in my head, I'm like, I'm going to have to keep doing this because I can't guarantee money through tattooing yet. But I think sometimes someone needs you need a gentle push, don't you? And Pete's pretty good at that sort of thing. He's like, it's now or never. He was like, you've got to make a decision. Do you want to do tattoos, or do you want to, work in a restaurant forever? And I wanted to do tattoos, so he was like, now's the time. You've got to quit. Otherwise, you can't really come back, sort of thing. Not in in a loving way. Not in it wasn't. Yeah. But it was an ultimatum, but it was kind of like done with love.
Yeah.
He knew that I wouldn't do that on my own.
Yeah, some people need that push.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's terrifying though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And like, I feel like heaps of people find it terrifying when they don't have a family to support, but you have all that extra pressure because it's like other people are relying on you. Yeah. And it's like a job where nothing's guaranteed and you can't just magically make customers appear.
Yeah.
Either when you're sort of still kind of relying on walk-ins, it's like there might be a day that someone doesn't come in, so it's super scary.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it still happens now. Like, I'm still in that mindset, but you learn how to cope with it. Like, you just have to, I guess, find mental coping mechanisms to help you through those times. Some people, lean on substances, and other people go and read philosophy or go and do, counselling or something to help you out. But you've got to be prepared that's going to be a reality for a while, And you just got to cope with it.
Was there, I don't know whether there was like one particular moment or if it was just a sequence of really small moments where you started to notice a change, where you started to like, whether it was getting busier or just your mindset sort of changed a little bit, where you're like, okay, no, cool, I've got this, it's happening, we're doing the damn thing?
I think after about, I think when I first started full time without like the restaurant was only a couple of months before COVID.
Right.
Before everything got locked down, and I think I had that time, that couple of months to find out what it's like, realize it's really, it's really fucking hard, but also go, no, I feel like I've got this. I just need to, get all of this sort of boxed off in my head so that I can cope with it. And then COVID happened, which meant that I could go home and spend, a few, whatever it was, months and months sort of working that out. And it gave me a breather, basically. Yeah. It gave me heaps of time to, catch up painting Flash and researching and finding out what direction I really wanted to go with tattooing. Because it's, you probably know yourself, like you sometimes lose your focus a little bit on where you want to push your work.
Yeah.
because you're doing so much stuff that isn't your, it's not necessarily your thing, but
Yeah.
you have to do it to pay the bills, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's a different sort of tattooing, really, isn't it? So
Yeah, I feel like I remember it like a distinct shift in your work was when we had Fred
Oh,
from
yeah.
Italy, Fred Trice.
yeah,
My mouth's dry and I can't roll my R's right now, but
Yeah.
pretend I said it like authentic Italian.
you got it. You nailed it.
So I remember he came in and guested with us for months, and he
Yeah.
was like painting a lot. And I remember you spending so much time with Fred, painting with Fred, and then everyone just noticed like this massive shift in your work and like directionally.
Yeah, that was a good time, actually. You're right. You jogged my memory there. Like, I think at that point I was not going through the motions, but I was started to shift from drawing on paper and then going into using, a tablet to draw on.
Yeah,
And then it just became a kind of like drawing by numbers thing just to try and get it done.
yeah,
And then I saw Fred's flash and I was like, nah, that's what I want. I want that sort of skill. So yeah, I just picked his brain for a few months and got him to just sit there and draw with him, or just sit there and watch his work process. And then that kind of sparked the thing that has kicked me on for until now, I guess, with what I like and how I like to work. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And then over that lockdown, like you were painting heaps, so it just sort of like it kept developing. And in the sense where it's like just through repetition, it was like painting more and more and more. And then when we were coming out of lockdowns and stuff like that, it was like, what the fuck? He's like a Pokemon, just fucking leveled up again, leveled up again, leveled up again. And it was just like, it seemed like just through painting, there were just like these huge developments. Like,
yeah, it's real important. I think if you don't do that, you're missing out on the sort of. Fred always used to say, "This is our gym. This is our our sort of training." Like you draw something on paper, you can tattoo it because it's there in front of you.
yeah,
Whereas if you're just using digital stuff, then it's not so. I know what I'm trying to say, but it's you can zoom in, you can zoom out. It's not really a tangible thing yet.
Yeah.
So you've printed it out. So
a painting bears more similarities to doing an actual tattoo.
yeah, definitely. Like your hand, you have there's no stabilizers on a pen.
Yeah,
When you're drawing a line, if you're pulling a line on Archer's paper, which is, as you know, is like real expensive, and you fuck it, that's it.
mistakes.
Yeah, you're like, oh well, that's gone. Try not to do that when you're tattooing, obviously. But
Yeah. In a way, I find painting more stressful than tattooing, and I don't know why.
yeah, it's interesting. Because it should be the other. You'd think it would be the other way around, wouldn't you? But
Yeah.
I guess you can. I think with tattooing, I sometimes go into a different mindset when I'm tattooing, and it will become second nature.
Yeah.
I was always told to think less when I'm doing it. It's like think as little as possible. Yeah, like rely on your
Instincts, like
your instincts
try not
in
to get in
training.
your head, overthink. It's a weird thing because you sort of have to be on the fence between two different mindsets. Like you need to be incredibly aware of the fact that it's permanent and it's on someone forever, and you're modifying their body for the rest of their life. Their physical appearance comes down to you doing a good job or not. So much pressure. And then if you think too much in that mindset, you'll wig yourself out and fuck it.
Yeah.
So then the other mindset is, oh, I'm just doing a lovely picture, and it's like having fun and all that sort of stuff. But if you go too far that way, then you can be complacent and fuck it. So it's like having to think of both of those things at the same time and just ride that line right down the middle of it, which is such a weird space to be in.
And it drifts. It definitely drifts depending on your mental state at the time. Like I've had, difficult times with mental health for most of my life, and sometimes it feels like the easiest job in the world, and sometimes it feels like the worst job in the world. And it just all depends on where your mental state is, and yeah, where you are on that line, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just switches like that. It could be anything.
Yeah, I remember you going through some like really hard times, and then you were just so open and in talking about them with us at the shop.
Yeah.
And then I went on like later on to have some really hard times as well. And I just remember all our conversations that we had and sort of how you dealt with it and all that sort of stuff. It was so helpful to me.
Glad to know that because, I mean, I've always been like that sort of way inclined where if there's something going on in my head, I'll bottle it up, but then eventually it'll all just come out. And then I realised the more you bottle it up, the worse it gets. So you just got to just be open with it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it is what it is at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And everyone just feels so isolated in that experience because no one's talking about it. So you think I'm the only person that's dealing with this, but probably 3 other people you're working with are also going through it and no one's talking about it.
Yeah.
So through the pandemic, you're sort of like you're getting busier, you're getting jobs, all that sort of stuff. It's like you're progressing, all sorts of stuff. Man's Ruin changes location and everything is going great. And at some point, there's like a life-altering moment that it would have felt like an incredible setback for you at the time.
Yeah, you mean my hand?
Yeah, I mean your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tricky to navigate that one.
So what happened? Like, walk us through what happened to your hand.
Well, someone tried to kill me.
I shouldn't laugh.
Well,
It's the delivery that's great.
yeah. And in defending myself in that moment, I managed to completely screw my tattoo in hand.
Yeah.
Or I didn't screw it; the guy did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, it was quite a tough time actually.
It was someone you had tattooed the day before.
Yeah,
They were stoked. They're like, thanks so much. I'll definitely be back.
yeah,
And then came back the following day.
yeah. With a yeah. All right, so I'll tell it. It'll be easy if I just tell it as it happened. So yeah, he came in, and he was booked in with another one of the artists at the shop, and he was weird. Like he clearly had some personality issues that were causing some people to be a bit. I don't know whether this guy should be in the shop.
Just a bit uncomfortable. Just making people a bit uneasy.
Yeah, very sort of abrupt, very aggressive, and it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, fuck, we should have just told him nah, but we took the job, and
Was it someone else took the job
yeah,
and then felt uneasy about it and you're like, I'll do it. Like,
exactly that. Yeah,
no worries. I'll just
yeah. I
done.
wanted to help out my my fellow workmate who was having a bit of a bad time herself at the time.
Yeah.
And I know what it's like. You can have a customer through no fault of their own. Their personality might not kind of gel with yours, and that will make you feel so anxious and nervous when you don't need to be. And I hadn't met the guy before, and I was doing someone a favour. So for me, it was like, well, I'm just helping out a mate.
Yeah.
So I took the job on. When they came in, they were like real, like I said, real abrupt, rude, aggressive. Wouldn't let me sort of go through the motions of a normal tattoo experience.
Right.
Like
Just intervening a lot.
kept intervening, kept cutting in, kept moving stuff around, just like not really having any sort of respect for space and whatnot. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to switch into kind of like assertive mode now and just get this done and get the guy out, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Just do it like paint by numbers sort of thing. So I've done that, and he's happy with the job. He paid, and exactly what he said. He said, "Oh, I'll certainly be back." And I was like, "Yeah, see, look, we've looked after you. I told you I would be able to, walk you through this."
Yeah.
Anyway, next day I've gone into the shop and I didn't have anything on, and I was just sitting down, just fiddling with a machine as you do. And he's walked back in the door, and I'm like, oh, here's that guy again. He must be coming to, I don't know, say hello or whatever. He didn't say a word, and he just walked straight into the tattooing area. And then the next thing I know, the knife's come out, and he's trying to plunge me in the, in the guts and in the kidneys and all sorts of places.
Yeah. In a shop where there's customers. Like,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
3 full bays. There's like 3 people or maybe 4 people tattooing at that time. So that's 8 other people in the shop who, have absolutely no context for what's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the melee, I've kind of like managed to defend myself and push him off, and he's grabbed my arm and he's just slashing at my hand, and then he's just stopped what he's doing, because at one point he was he was still coming and trying to stab me, and I'm like, mate, what are you doing? Like, I've got kids, like, because there was no words, like he didn't say anything, so he didn't even give me chance to kind of like go, well, actually, this is how it was. But
he was quite rude about it.
Yeah. And then he's just stopped, put the knife away and walked off. No words.
Yeah.
At which point I'm looking at my ruined hand and I'm like, Jesus, like, bleeding.
Like in that moment thinking that's a career ender?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, my fingers were pretty much hanging off. So they went right through here, and then the front of the hand was sort of like down there.
Yeah.
And then there was just like broken tendons where the fingers should be, and then blood shooting out of it, like, which prompted me to like sort of call for attention, because I was like, everyone was obviously shocked and they were just like that, frozen. So I was like, has anyone got a towel, because I'm bleeding quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then that snapped everyone out. And then, Lacey came racing. Lacey Griffiths, came racing over, who I was working with at the time. Like, took a jumper off, wrapped a jumper around my hand. But there was, honestly, I'd never seen so much blood in all my life. And it's amazing how much blood you can lose and still feel completely normal.
I feel like, given that situation of anyone that could have been in the shop, there were 2 customers that proved to be quite handy in a situation like that.
Yeah, like one of the guys was a nurse, and they came rushing over, and I can't remember what the other guy did, but he
was a crime scene cleaner, wasn't he?
That was it. Yeah. But anyway, he was the one who went and got the number plate.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and like managed, so because we had the guy's details, because we wasn't trying to hide who he was.
Yeah, no false information on the consent form.
Yeah. But he, so this crime scene cleaner dude was like, I got the guy's, the guy's number plate, so we could pass it on to the cops. And then, the nurse was like able to take over from where Lacey was like holding my hand together and just like actually check everything was working, check that I was all right and things. I just remember just being real super angry at that point.
Yeah.
And like, because I thought that was it. I didn't think I'd be...
Everything you'd worked towards over such a long period of time, and how much you've like struggled to get to where you were, be just taken away by someone else in an instant.
Yeah, so I was kind of furious at that point.
Yeah.
I was like, exactly like you said. It was like such a struggle to get there, such a like a difficult period mentally, like having to like sort of reinvent yourself pretty much in your early to mid 30s. And then just when it starts getting going, after we'd already had like all of the lockdowns through COVID, to have it all sort of almost be taken away, like that was pretty, it's pretty devastating at that point.
So, and like it didn't sort of end there, in the sense of like, you went to hospital, you had to get like crazy surgery to repair the tendons in your hand, and then like rehabilitate it for however long.
Oh yeah, I had to learn to use it again properly. I had to go and like go to Melbourne Hand Rehab, I think it's called. It's down in opposite the Alfred Hospital.
Yep.
I was going there like twice a week, just having like real sort of basic, physiotherapy, like lifting my finger off of the table and stuff like that. And it would take me like 2 or 3 weeks to even be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it was such a... Like mentally, that was like real tough, because you'd look at you had the hand was all held together with stitches and bandages and stuff, and once it was all taken off, you just see this like sort of mess.
Yeah,
that was once your money maker, at the end of the day. And when they're asking you to do things like just lift your finger off, you can do that without even thinking about it normally, and just like all of the mental concentration in the world and all of like the straining wouldn't even achieve that sometimes.
Yeah.
That was quite tough, but
And also, when this had happened, you'd had another son as well. So
Yeah,
now
yeah.
you've got two young kids
Yeah.
and your partner that you're supporting, and it's like the stakes are even higher yet again. But I remember Man's Ruin just sort of coming together as well, and
Oh man, they took care of me. Like I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to be, to have in my corner. Like they just supported me the whole way through it. Pete and Mikey, who own the shop, were, they saw me right. I never missed a rent payment. I never missed, a bill payment because of those guys. And then everyone else organising flash days and things. So just being there is like moral support,
yeah,
Just
it was really cool to see. And like I think like the flash day that they had, a bunch of other tattooers that had previously worked at Man, like heaps of people came for it.
Robbo came down and he now works there, Robbo Funders, and Leone New came down and helped out. Who's got a shop out in not Hamilton, Castlemaine,
Yep.
Forest Creek Tattoo. They all came down because they were, as soon as they heard what happened, they wanted to help out, and I think that's really important in tattooing and why I really like being in the industry, because as soon as something like that happens, like your whole community just sort of rally around. Like yourself, like I sent you that message saying, "Did I ever tell you that time I got stabbed at work?" You were like, "No, what's happened?" And then you came by the next day when I was in hospital and dropped off Jaffa cakes and Twiglets and
Yeah, all the English snacks I could think of.
yeah, that helped. Couldn't eat any of it though because I was waiting for the operation.
Yeah, you just had to stare at it.
Nice idea.
Yeah, that's the cool thing with tattooing, like that sort of sense of community. Even back when the really crazy bushfires were going on, like so many tattoo shops were doing fundraisers for that to donate to rural fire brigades and stuff like that. And it's crazy that something incredibly unexpected or tragic or whatever can happen, and it's just like without even thinking, tattooers are like, okay, no, let's like pull together, invest our like time and resources and effort into like I don't know, raising money for things. I feel like the tattoo community is really good at that.
Yeah, I think it's because a lot of the time we see ourselves as being kind of an insular sort of industry
Yeah,
where we don't get a lot of help from outside, resources, I guess. Like there's no one in the government who's like, oh, we need to improve the situation in tattooing or anyway. And I don't think anyone would want that. Like
you feel like it's up to you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like a self-contained, self-run. We pass the knowledge down the line, and you keep your secrets and you share it with the people in your community, and that's how it all that's how it all works.
Yeah.
Like, we all help each other out. I mean, I'm sure there is difficulties within that community as well, but I think my experience of it mostly has been positive.
Yeah. So like the rehabilitation of your hand, I remember like again you just expressing your frustration. It was like you couldn't draw, couldn't paint, couldn't cook, couldn't wash dishes.
Tried to teach myself to draw left-handed.
Yeah.
I did. It was all right, but I just remember it being ungodly, sort of in the frustration that I was feeling because I knew what I wanted to do and my hand just would not do it.
Yeah.
On the left hand, just would not do it, and it was such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
And then, I kind of was like just considering what I would do if it doesn't work again. Because when I went to rehab, they were like, "I can't promise you it's gonna be the same."
Yeah, you don't know whether like you go back to tattooing. If you go back to tattooing, am I going to be able to last the duration of a tattoo? Or like, am I going to have to do a palm-sized tattoo in 3 sessions? Like, you don't know what your hand's going to be capable of at the end of all the rehab.
No. And luckily, it's pretty much back to, I think the way I was lucky in that is the tendons that were damaged didn't affect so there was the the back tendons, like I think they're called extensors. I'm probably wrong on that, but it's
Yeah, the
something like
tendons
that.
on the back of your hand help you like extend fingers,
Yeah.
and then the tendons on the inside of your hand is like grip.
Yeah,
And they got the top of your hand.
top of my hand. And the guy said that's probably a saving grace. Like
Oh.
if you get back to it, that will be because of that. Because the ones on the palm of your hand are real hard to fix, I think.
Yeah.
So I was lucky in that respect that it was the ones on the back. I still can't grip properly. Like
Oh, really?
yeah, that my grip strength isn't anywhere near what it used to be. But so I used to sorry, I used to struggle with small tactile things like belt buckles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was because of the grip strength, I guess, and like the little tactile muscles in your hand and fingers.
Yeah.
And the guy at the rehab centre was like, you probably won't get them back, but he was like, but for what you're doing, you don't really need. Like, you know what it's like, it's hard to describe to someone who doesn't do tattoos, but you do, so you know what I mean. And you know, when you hold a machine, you don't have to like hold it super tight. Like it's actually detrimental if you do. Like
Yeah, but one of the earliest pieces of advice I got from a guy that worked at the shop with me was I was just strangling the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
I was like, he's like, I can see your knuckles going white through the gloves, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, you don't need to hold it that tight. But I think there's that weird thing where you think, if I don't hold it tight, it's vibrating, it's moving. Like, you know, how am I going to do
Yeah.
a straight line? But yeah, you're right. You don't actually have to hold it that tight to be able to do it.
So the grip strength didn't really cause a problem. It was just making sure that all the fingers stayed, you know, sort of where they're supposed to be. Cause,
Yeah.
without cramping up, because it was the cramps I was getting was the problem, because the new tendons, we had to stretch the tendons out slowly, and you kind of have to really just listen to your body, because you can rupture the stitches, because basically they just reattached point to point with some stitches. So
Yeah.
if you go too quickly, it's like an elastic band, you know. It's like you're either going to overstretch it and then it's going to lose its elasticity, or you're going to just snap it all together.
Yeah.
So it's just a case of like going real slow. It's getting better now, like I'd say. I don't get as many cramps, but it still locks up every now and again.
And the police ended up catching the guy too.
Yeah, immediately, yeah. He
Yeah.
was just waiting for him at home, basically.
Yeah.
He had I don't know. I never really got a straight answer, because as soon as they caught him, I didn't really want anything to do with it. I was like, well, that's up to you guys now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he certainly had a personality disorder.
Yeah.
And my view of it was, you know, I don't really know what his like upbringing or anything was, but he clearly was, you know, a troubled individual.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. It's like, I think I said to a few people, you know, if you were swimming in a swimming pool and you got attacked by a shark, you wouldn't be annoyed at the shark, because, you know, the shark shouldn't be in a swimming pool in the first place. You're like, who'd have fuck put a shark in a swimming pool, innit?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, I think it's like a lot of things, like the problems that we had at the old shop. It's a failing like at the top level, you know, like the people who made our lives colourful, shall we say, that, you know, they didn't choose to be in that situation or that position.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like circumstances, and there's no help for them, you know.
Yeah.
And if there is help, it's not affordable for them, you know.
Yeah. What's your sort of stance on looking back at negative experiences, or, you know, going into something that, I'm not talking about the hand situation specifically, but going into a situation where, you know, it might not be pleasant, but you know what, if I can just get through that, I've got a pretty good story. Like, sometimes do you think like, look, this is just a momentary bit of discomfort, but I'll have the story forever.
Yeah.
And like, is that a sort of a mindset that sort of gets you through things sometimes?
For sure, yeah. I think everyone with a story would have had to have done something with some element of risk in it.
Yeah.
Whether you chose to or not, you know, you're in a situation that's risky, you're going to have a story about it, aren't you? So it does kind of give you a bit of, I don't know. I guess like having a story to tell at the end of something helps you to deal with it.
Yeah.
Kind of puts it in a box so that you can, you share that with other people. You can, elaborate on it a little bit, or frame it in whatever light you want it to be framed in. Like if it's a difficult experience for you, framing it in, like making it funny, sometimes can help you to process it and put it away and not dwell on it.
Knowing you got through it, you're okay, you survived it,
Yeah,
and then you can sort of reflect on it in different ways.
absolutely. Like this has brought my family closer together. It's made me appreciate my friends more. It's made me appreciate just being able to do like normal things.
Yeah.
Being able to draw. One of the most frustrating things when my hand wasn't working was not being able to draw, because I realised how much time I just spend doing that as a pastime, as like a way of relaxing.
Yeah.
And the same with cooking as well. Like cooking's another thing I do to relax, and not being able to do those two things made me really realise like how reliant I am on them as a sort of way of winding down.
Yeah. And somewhat recently, like in the last few months, you've had like a huge shift in you and your family have moved to Queensland. Like
New South Wales, but
New South Wales, working in Queensland. So what's sort of like that new chapter been like? Sort of moving from St Kilda, starting fresh. How's that been?
pretty stressful.
Stressful?
Yeah, it's like anything. Moving down a road's pretty stressful, isn't it? But moving to a new state in a place where it's very different from where I've been living for the last 10 years. Yeah, it was pretty stressful, but it's just one of those things, isn't it? You get through it. You know that it's unpleasant,
Yeah.
and the stressful times are unpleasant. I mean, and it feels uncomfortable. But in my experience, every time that's happened to me, a year later, I've looked back and gone, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad that I went through that, because now I'm different, or it's prompted me to change something about my life. This has prompted me to sort of put into practice all of the techniques I've been taught through counselling to deal with like anxiety and depression and things.
Yeah.
And then also to look for different ways or look to sort of like, just explore different ways of dealing with that as well. So I've been looking at like reading philosophers and things like that, and
And like through reading philosophers, that's connected to how you're dealing with anxiety and stuff. Like
Yeah.
reading just like a quote and then considering your situation in relation to that quote.
Yeah, 100%. It's basically like giving me. So I went to counselling when I was doing my apprenticeship, actually, to help deal with the anxiety, because it was out of control at one point.
Yeah.
And then that leads to depression, and I needed to be present for my family. I needed to be not in that in that headspace. So I was like, I need to make a change.
Yeah.
And I went and spoke to a professional, and we started unpicking what's going on. You know, like why are these things happening? And I think without any intervention from professionals, you can just think that you're broken or there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily true,
Was it just kind of like those anxieties were sort of always there? It wasn't because of tattooing, but like the anxieties were already there, and then tattooing and those sort of stressful situations were like exacerbating it.
Yeah, because it's just how your brain copes in situations which are stressful. Unless everyone's experienced some anxiety of some kind.
Yeah.
And that's just how it was framed to me was like, that's your brain's, flight or fight mechanism.
Yeah.
And with people with anxiety, that can be a little bit off kilter, so you might have had traumatic experiences in the past, and then your brain is attaching sort of markers to those experiences. And then because like any situation can trigger those markers, and then your brain will start attaching markers just to any situation, because you're feeling this like sort of urge to either run away or fight.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for it, so your brain is like deciding, well, this must be the reason for it, and then so it'll seep from your past into your present.
So how have you used philosophy, like integrated philosophy into those coping sort of tactics?
I think it's like you highlight where you what the issue is, what is exactly is it that is causing you the anxiety, and once you've done that, you can kind of find something that helps you contextualize it, I guess. So
Right.
for me, I think it was like not being the ideal sort of provider, shall we say,
Right.
and that was causing me a lot of, not being as successful as I should be, or not doing this or not doing that. It's like they're almost like regrets of things that haven't even happened, sort of thing.
Right.
So after a long time of counselling, I then was able to go and look into my own ways of coping with things, and I discovered Stoicism, which is the philosophy that I was looking at.
Like bottling it up, not bothering anyone with it.
No, it's more a case of like just deciding what's important and what's not, and what can you affect and what you can't affect. And if you can't affect something, it allows you to step away and just go, oh, I can't, I don't have any control over that. So it's relinquishing control of a situation, I guess. So
It just became painfully apparent to me that I've been using the word stoicism wrong my entire life.
yeah, I think a lot of people have
Yeah.
that impression. I did as well.
Yeah.
But it's
So just realizing, what's in your control, what's not in your control, and not trying to,
yeah,
yeah,
just saying, okay, that's it. Like a good example of it is in the morning, if you wake up, it's a nice day. You go, it's a nice day. That's it. That's all you need to know for that situation. You need to go, it's a nice day, and I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to do that. Oh, what if this happens later on? What if that happens later on? You just go, well, right now it's a nice day, and that's as much as you need to know right now. Let's get on with the next task.
yeah. I feel like my anxiety definitely is, I'll go down that snowball going down the mountain of just like all these hypothetical situations that haven't even happened yet. And I'm like, oh, but what if this happens? Then that will happen. Then that will happen. And it's all these things. And I'm getting so far ahead of myself and getting really worked up about it. Literally the first thing hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah, there's like three real fundamentals of it, and it's like remembering one day you're gonna die. So like you're gonna die. So like none of this is gonna matter
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
And another one is maintaining your first impressions of a situation. So it's like a good example of that is if you're, for me, I'm a father. So one of my sons wakes up coughing in the night, and I'm thinking, oh, he's sick. I don't then go to think, oh, he's sick. Oh, what if I need to take him to hospital? What if he's, really sick? What are we going to do? How are we going to cope? It's just like, he's sick, so let's go and deal with that.
it.
Yeah. It's like you can apply that to any situation. It's like just maintain that first impression, because letting your mind go to the next, the next sort of eventuality there is not helpful. It's not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
And then it comes to don't borrow trauma from the future. It's like, if you're imagining an event that hasn't happened and it's a traumatic experience, like don't take that on now. Don't go, oh, well, I'm going to feel so bad about that and start feeling that trauma, because you're just borrowing it from an imaginary, thing. It doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. I guess, it sounds cliche, but trying to be present, but it's so difficult because so many people, it's like instead of just like addressing the moment as it's happening, they're thinking about shit that's already happened and shit that hasn't happened, and they're either like so far in the future or so far in the past that they're neglecting what's happening right in front of them, and then that becomes in the future a thing that they regret doing in the past or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's just staying present is incredibly difficult. And like I've talked to so many different people about it, and some people, are into meditation, some people are into extracurricular substances, microdosing, stuff like that. Other people journaling. Everyone has like all these different methods for sort of trying to stay present in what's actually happening.
It's really helpful for tattooing.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Bringing it back to that, it's like you have to just be in the present moment when you're tattooing, because if you start thinking too far ahead, like you say, you get into your own head, and then you start making mistakes because you're starting to fear something that hasn't happened.
Yeah. And all that matters in that moment is that customer as well. It's like their experience that they're paying for. It's like they deserve your sort of undivided attention in that moment instead of think like elsewhere, you know?
Exactly, and it also helps with dealing with like the past as well, because as you know in tattooing, no one's ever done every single tattoo that they've ever done has been like 100%
No.
to their standard. As you told me when I first started, you're going to have to do a lot of shit tattoos before you can do a good one. And
Oh, fuck yeah, man.
unfortunately, that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, no one starts off good, and it's so hard because you're beating yourself up over it. It's like their first week of tattooing and they did something and they know it's not good, and they're like terrified. They're like, I'm just not good at this. And it's like, no, you're going to be terrified for fucking years.
I still am sometimes, you know.
I think everyone is. There's always something that you haven't done before or something that goes wrong for the first time. There's always going to be something. But knowing it's like, cool, like once it's over, that's a thing I have in my back pocket. I've done it. I've addressed it. I know what to do now in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's like, you're going to get better. With every tattoo you do, you're going to get better.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. But yeah, just not dwelling on it, because you know what it's like when you have those horror tats that have been so traumatic for you. They keep you awake at night sometimes. And dealing with that is like, that's in the past. It doesn't exist anymore. The tattoo still exists, but you know, that experience is in the past, and the past is gone.
I had a tattoo that I did as an apprentice where I wasn't ready to do it. And it was sort of like, all right, I'm going to have to do something like this at some point, in at the deep end. Took it on, didn't do a great job of it. And then the customer like went away, and it kept me up at night. I was thinking about it all the time. It stressed me out. I was bummed, all that sort of stuff. 2 years later, she leaves a Google review about not stoked on the tat.
Wow.
But doesn't say that it was 2 years ago. And then I was on holidays where I just get a screenshot of the review, and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I'd just forgotten about it, you know? I just stopped beating myself up over it, and then it came back to haunt me. But it's like, it happens. And I feel like no one talks about it. I feel every single tattooer that's out there has experiences like that.
Absolutely. And hearing about them from other tattooers is quite therapeutic, I think.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Everyone's got them.
For sure.
Unfortunately, it happens, like you say. And it's just the way it is. That's how you learn and how you get better.
Yeah.
And it's healthy to have a bit of fear when you're going into
definitely. You should be scared. You should feel pressure, because it's a big responsibility. And I feel like if someone goes into a tattoo and they're not a little bit nervous or a little bit scared or feeling that pressure, probably shouldn't be doing it, because you obviously don't care enough about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've been ranting out these episodes, basically giving you the floor. If there's anyone you want to shout out, 383 or, anyone. So.
Yeah. Everyone at 383 in the Gold Coast, Broadbeach in the Gold Coast, like probably best tattoo shop on the Gold Coast, I would say. Been such an amazing experience being there. Like, I've gone from a shop where I was really in my comfort zone. You know, the guys at Man's Ruin are like family to me. I love them all. And going there, it's just really pushed me on a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like really sort of made me think, oh, I need to get better in this area. I need to get better in that area. And the really important thing is there's people there you can just go up to and ask, and they've been tattooing. Some of them have been tattooing since like the 90s.
Wow.
And the amount of accumulated knowledge in that shop is out of control. So you can literally walk into 383 Tattoo and get any tattoo you want.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what style, what area of interest it is, someone there will be able to do it and do a good job as well, which is important. Because there's a lot of subpar shops around, especially in that region.
I remember one of the first things you told me when you went there was like, everyone is just painting for fun in their own time.
Yeah, always. Yeah, so we spend so much time painting in downtime. I've just gone through. I think I've painted 12 flash sheets since I've been there, and I've only been there a few months, which is a huge amount, as you all know.
Yeah.
And it's more a case of everyone's like doing it because that's one of their passions,
Yeah.
It's not just a job for a lot of people. So yeah, those guys are epic. It's been so good being there. Just finding my feet at the moment, but we'll get there.
Epic. Go get tattooed by Louis at 383 up in Broadbeach.
And Man's Ruin as well. And
Man's Ruin. You come back for semi-frequent guest spots?
Every 6 weeks I'm going to try and come down here because there's a lot of people who still want to get tattooed by me down here. So, awesome. Which is amazing. It's like I never thought I'd be in that situation in my career, and here I am.
Right. Louis, thank you so much for coming down and doing this.
That's all right,
I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it, dude. Thank you.
No worries.
This podcast is recorded with the team at Superdog Studios here in Melbourne. For all your video and audio podcast needs and much, much more, visit superdogstudios.com.